Good morning, friends. You are most welcome to Think Eyes channel. Today we are discussing the modern India, which is written by Bipin Chandra, and our chapter is the decline of Mughal Empire. The Sayyid brothers made a vigorous effort to contain rebellions and to save the empire from the administrative disintegration. They failed in these tasks mainly because they were faced with constant political rivalry, quarrels, and conspiracies at the court. This continued friction in the ruling circles disorganized and even paralyzed administration at all levels. Lawlessness and disorder spread everywhere. The financial positions of the state deteriorated rapidly as zamindars and rebellious elements refused to pay land revenues. Officials misappropriated state revenues, and central income declined because of the spread of revenue farming. As a result, the salaries of the officials and soldiers could not be paid regularly, and the soldiers became undisciplined and even mutinous. Even though the Sayyid brothers had tried hard to conciliate the conciliate and befriend all sections of the nobility, a powerful group of nobles headed by Nizam ul Mulk and his father's cousin Muhammad Amin Khan began to conspire against them. These nobles were jealous of the growing power of the two brothers. The deposition and murder of the Farrukhsiyar frightened many of them. If the emperor could be killed, what safety was there for mere nobles? Moreover, the murder of the emperor created a wave of public revulsion against the two brothers. They were looked down upon as traitors persons who had not been true to their Salt Namak Haram. Many of the nobles of Aurangzeb's reign also disliked the Sayyid alliance with the Rajputs and Maratha chiefs and their liberal policy towards the Hindus. These nobles declared that the Sayyids were following anti Mughal and anti Islamic policies. They tried to arouse the financial section of the Muslim nobility against the Sayyid brothers. The anti Sayyid nobles were supported by Emperor Muhammad Shah, who wanted to free himself from the control of the two brothers. In 1720, they succeeded in the treacherously assassinating Hussein Ali Khan, the younger of the two brothers. Abdullah Khan tried to fight back but was defeated near Agra. Thus ended the domination of the Mughal Empire by the Sayyid brothers, known in Indian history as kingmakers. Muhammad Shah's long reign of nearly 30 years, 1719 to 1748, was the last chance of saving the empire. There were no quick changes of the imperial authority as in the period 1707 to 1720. When his reign began, Mughal prestige among the people was still an important political factor. The Mughal army and particularly the Mughal artillery was still a force to reckon with. Administration in northern India had deteriorated but not broken down yet. The Maratha Sardars were still confined to the south, while the Rajput Rajas continued to be loyal to the Mughal dynasty. A strong and far-sighted ruler, supported by a nobility conscious of its peril, might still have saved the situation. But Muhammad Shah was not the man of the moment. He was weak minded and frivolous and over fond of a life of ease and luxury. He neglected the affairs of state instead of giving full support to able wazirs such as Nizamul Mulk. He fell under the evil influence of corrupt and worthless flatterers and intrigued intrigued against his own ministers. He even shared in the bribes taken by his favorite courtiers. Disgusted with the fickle-minded, fickle-mindedness and suspicious nature of the emperor and the constant quarrels at the court, Nizamul Mulk, the most powerful noble of the time, decided to follow his own ambitions. He had become the Wazir in 1722 and made a vigorous attempt to reform the administration. He now decided to leave the emperor and his empire to their fate and to strike out on his own. His relinquished his office. He relinquished his office in October 1724 and marched south to found the state of Hyderabad in the Deccan. His departure was symbolic to the flight of loyalty and virtue from the empire. The physical breakup of the Mughal Empire had begun. The other powerful and ambitious nobles also now began to utilize their energies for carving out semi independent states. Hereditary Nawabs owning nominal allegiance to the emperor at Delhi arose in many parts of the country, for example, in Bengal, Hyderabad, Awadh, and the Punjab. Everywhere, petty zamindars, rajas, and nawabs raised the banner of rebellion and independence. The Maratha Sardars began their northern expansion and overrun Malwa, Gujarat, and Bundelkhand. Then, in 1738 to 1739, Nadir Shah descended upon the plains of northern India and the empire lay prostrate. Nadir Shah had risen from shepherd boy to Shah, that is king, by saving Persia from sure decline and disintegration. In the beginning of the 18th century, Persia, hitherto a powerful and far flung empire, was under the weak rule of the declining Safavi dynasty. It was threatened by internal rebellions and foreign attacks. In the east, the Abdali tribesmen revolted and occupied Herat, and the Ghalzai tribesmen detached the province of Kandhar. Similar revolts occurred in the north and west. In Shirvan, religious persecution of the Sunnis by fanatical Shias led to rebellion. Here, Sunni mullahs were put to death, mosques were profaned and turned into stables, and religious works were destroyed. In 1721, the Ghalzai chief of Kandahar, Mahmud, invaded Persia and occupied Isfahan and occupied Isfahan, the capital. Russia under the Peter the Great was determined to push southward. Peter began his invasion to Persia in July 1722 and soon forced Persia to sign away several of her provinces on the Caspian Sea, including the town of Baku, Turkey. Deprived of most of her European possessions, also hoped to make good the loss at Persia's cost. In the spring of 1723, Turkey declared war on Persia and rapidly pushed through Georgia and then penetrated south. In June 1724, Russia and Turkey signed a treaty dividing all northern and most of the western Persia between them. At this stage in 1726, Nadir emerged as a major supporter of the Tahmap TAHM and as his most brilliant commander. In 1729, he won back Herat after defeating the Abdalis and expelled the Ghalzais from Isfahan and central and southern Persia. After long and bitter warfare, he compelled Turkey to give back all conquered territory. In 1735, he signed a treaty with Russia, receiving back all seized territory. The following year, he deposed the last of the Safavi rulers and made himself the Shah. In the following years, he reconquered the province of Kandhar. Nadir Shah was attracted to India by the fabulous wealth for which it was always famous. Continual campaign had made Persia virtually bankrupt. Money was needed desperately to maintain his mercenary army. Spoils from India could be a solution. At the same time, the visible weaknesses of the Mughal Empire made such spoliation possible. He entered Indian territory towards the end of 1738 without meeting any opposition. For years, the defenses of the northwest frontier had been neglected. The danger was not fully recognized till the enemy had occupied Lahore. Hurried preparations were then made for the defense of Delhi, but the faction ridden nobles refused to unite even in sight of the enemy. They could not agree on a plan for defense or on the commander of the defending forces. Disunity, poor leadership, mutual jealousies, and distrust could lead only to defeat. The two armies met at Karnal on 13th February 1739 and the invader inflicted a crushing defeat on the Mughal army. The Emperor Muhammad Shah was taken prisoner and Nadir Shah marched onto Delhi. A terrible massacre of the citizens of the imperial capital was ordered by Nadir Shah as a reprisal against the killing of some of his soldiers. The greedy invader took possession of the royal treasury and other royal property, levied tribute on the leading nobles, and plundered the rich of Delhi. His total plunder has been estimated at 70 crores of rupees. The enabled him this enabled him to exempt his own kingdom from taxation for 3 years. He also carried away the famous Koh-e-Noor, or we can say it Koh-Noor diamond and the jewel-studded peacock throne of Shah Jahan. He compelled Muhammad Shah to cede to him all the provinces of the empire west to the river Indus. Nadir Shah's invasion inflicted immense damage on the Mughal Empire. He caused an irreparable loss of prestige and exposed the hidden weaknesses of the empire to the Maratha Sardars and the foreign trading companies. The central administration was paralyzed temporarily. The invasion ruined imperial finances and adversely affected the economic life of the country. The impoverishment, or we can say it, the impoverished nobles began to began to rack rent and oppress the peasantry even more in an effort to recover their lost fortunes. They also fought one another over rich jagirs and high offices more desperately than ever. The loss of Kabul and the areas of the west of the Indus once again opened the empire to the threat of the invasions from the northwest. A vital line of defense had disappeared. It is surprising indeed that the empire seemed to revive some of its strength after Nadir Shah's departure, even though the area under its effective control shrank rapidly. But the rival was deceptive and superficial. After Muhammad Shah's death in 1748, bitter struggles and even civil war broke out among unscrupulous and power hungry nobles. Furthermore, as a result of the weakening of the northwestern defenses, the empire was devastated by the repeated invasions of Ahmad Shah Abdali and the one of Nadir Shah's ablest generals who had succeeded in establishing his authority over Afghanistan after Master's death. Abdali repeatedly invaded and plundered northern India right down to Delhi and Mathura between 1748 and 1767. In 1761, he defeated the Marathas in the Third Battle of Panipat and thus gave a big blow to their ambition of controlling the Mughal emperor and thereby dominating the country. He did not, however, found a new Afghan kingdom in India. He and his successors could not even retain the Punjab, which they soon lost to the six chiefs. As a result of the invasions of Nadir Shah and Abdali and the suicidal internal feuds of the Mughal nobility, the Mughal Empire had by 1761 ceased to exist in practice as an all India empire. It remained merely as the Kingdom of Delhi. Delhi itself was a scene of daily riot and tumult. The descendants of the Grand Mughals no longer participated actively in the struggles for the empire of the India, but the various contenders for power found it politically useful to hide behind their name. This gave to the Mughal dynasty a long lease of life on the nominal throne of Delhi. Alam Shah II, who ascended the throne in 1759, spent the initial years as an emperor wandering from place to place far away from his capital, for he lived in mortal fear of his own wazir. He was a man of some ability and ample courage, but the empire was by now beyond redemption. In 1764, he joined Mir Qasim of Bengal and Suza ud Dawla of Awadh in declaring war upon the English East India Company. Defeated by the British at the Battle of Buxar, he lived for several years at Allahabad as a prisoner of the East India Company. He left the British shelter in 1772 and returned to Delhi proactive under the protective arm of the Marathas. The British occupied Delhi in 1803, and from that year until 1857, when the Mughal dynasty was finally extinguished, the Mughal emperor merely served as a political front for the English. In fact, the continuation of the Mughal monarchy after 1759, when it had ceased to be a military power, was due to the powerful hold that the Mughal dynasty had on the minds of the people of India as the symbol of the political unity of the country. Thank you very much.